Welcome back. In this video, we explore the relationship between educational policy and educational governance and examine why they cannot be fully understood in isolation from one another. Let me begin with a simple question. Which comes first, policy or governance? Some people argue that policy comes first. Governments, ministries, and institutions develop policies that establish goals, priorities, and expectations. Governance then helps implement those policies through leadership, structures, and decision-making processes. Others argue that governance comes first. Governance influences who participates in decision-making, whose voices are heard, and how priorities are established. From this perspective, governance shapes policy. The reality is that policy and governance are deeply interconnected. Understanding educational systems requires us to examine both together rather than separately. Before bringing policy and governance together, it is useful to understand how they have traditionally been viewed. Policy is often associated with laws, regulations, strategic plans, and formal decisions. Researchers who study policy frequently focus on what policies are intended to achieve. Governance is often associated with leadership, authority, accountability, and decision-making structures. Researchers who study governance frequently focus on how decisions are made and who makes them. This distinction can be useful for organizing research and understanding complex systems. However, educational systems rarely operate through completely separate policy and governance processes. In practice, the two are closely connected. When we look at educational systems in practice, policy and governance are constantly interacting. Policies establish goals, priorities, expectations, and accountability requirements that guide educational action. Governance provides the structures, leadership, and decision-making processes through which those policies are interpreted and enacted. Neither policy nor governance operates independently. Educational change emerges through the interaction between the two. Understanding this interaction is essential for understanding how educational systems function. Let us look more closely at how this relationship works. Policies provide direction. They establish priorities, allocate resources, and define expectations for educational organizations. Governance helps translate that direction into practice. Leaders and organizations make decisions about implementation, coordination, and accountability. As implementation unfolds, new information emerges about what is working, what challenges exist, and where adjustments may be needed. The relationship is therefore dynamic rather than fixed. Policy and governance continually influence one another over time. Let us look at an example. Consider a government introducing a new inclusion policy designed to improve equitable access to learning. Districts or education authorities interpret the policy, provide guidance, and allocate resources. School leaders then organize implementation within their local context by making decisions about staffing, support services, and professional learning. Teachers translate the policy into classroom practice by adapting instruction and responding to learner needs. Students ultimately experience the results of these decisions. This example shows that educational outcomes are shaped not only by policy itself, but also by the governance decisions that occur throughout the system. The relationship does not end once a policy is implemented. Teachers, school leaders, districts, and students generate valuable knowledge about how policies function in practice. They identify challenges, unexpected consequences, successful approaches, and areas where additional support may be needed. This information helps policymakers understand whether policies are achieving their intended goals or not. In this way, governance contributes to policy improvement by providing feedback from practice. When we bring these ideas together, educational systems can be understood as a continuous cycle. Policy establishes directions and priorities. Governance supports implementation through leadership, decision-making, and organizational structures. Implementation generates experience, evidence, and outcomes. Those experiences inform further decisions and contribute to policy refinement. Educational systems, therefore, learn and adapt over time rather than operate through a simple one-way process. This relationship between policy and governance is at the heart of the Holistic Education Policy Governance Approach, or HEPGA. HEPGA helps us understand how policy decisions, governance structures, implementation processes, and educational outcomes are connected. Rather than focusing on a single policy or a single decision, HEPGA encourages us to examine the broader system and the relationships between its different parts. It helps leaders and researchers understand how actions at one level can influence outcomes at another, and how learning from practice can support improvement. Most importantly, HEPGA reminds us that educational systems are interconnected, dynamic, and continuously evolving. In the next module, we will examine where policy and governance interactions occur across educational systems and how HEPGA can help us understand this.